Hey, I'm Jen, and I'm going to give a brief update on the state of the SecureDrop project. For those of you that don't know, one of the last projects that Aaron worked on was a whistleblower submission system that could be used by any news organization. The system would provide strong protections for journalistic sources. That's something that's motivated by the current surveillance landscape. If an investigator wants to find the identity of a source, they don't even need to ask a journalist, hey, who is your source for this story? Instead, they can just go to the third party, could be Verizon or Gmail or AT&T, that keeps records of who talked to who and figure out a source's identity that way in order to prosecute them. And that's something that we've seen a massive increase in under both Obama and Trump, a massive increase in the number of prosecutions of journalistic sources. So that's the problem that SecureDrop aims to solve, and Aaron aimed to solve, which was put very nicely in this Tau Center report on the project that came out a few years ago. SecureDrop restores the effectiveness of a reporter's privilege to protect their sources through principled non-cooperation. The way that we do that is by minimizing these third parties primarily. So news organizations will install SecureDrop on premises at the news org. All traffic is routed through Tor, which is an anonymity system, and the purpose of that is to reduce the metadata trail that links journalists and sources. That's the trail that investigators are following when they attempt to identify an anonymous source. So from the perspective of a source, you just download Tor browser, which is an anonymous web browser based on Firefox, and you go to the SecureDrop site associated with a given news organization. Here we're showing Al Jazeera. And you either click Get Started to submit something, or you can return if you have ongoing correspondence with a journalist at that organization. Here are the organizations that were using SecureDrop as of last year. So it includes big news organizations like The Guardian and The New York Times, as well as smaller nonprofits like Lucy Parsons Labs. In the past year, we've had these new organizations start using SecureDrop in their newsrooms. So that includes NBC News, which is really cool. And also our first academic institution with Harvard's Institute for Quantitative Social Science, which is using SecureDrop to collect data. So this is the current SecureDrop team. Everyone here are either full-time employees or contractors of Freedom of the Press Foundation, which supports the project. Some of these people are engineers. We also have a support team that helps organization install and get set up. And we also have an excellent training team led by Harlow Holmes, who teaches journalists how to use SecureDrop and other digital security tools for journalism. So next I'm going to talk about some of the things we've been working on in the past year. This is our release schedule for mainline development. We release every 6 to 8 weeks. Some of the high points are that we now support next generation onion services, also called V3 onion addresses. This is a really major security improvement and provides much stronger crypto. We use Tor onion services in a bunch of places in the SecureDrop ecosystem, even by default for administrators that work on the instance. But this improvement is most important for SecureDrop for the connection between the source and the server where they submit documents. And you can tell as a potential source if a site is using next generation onion services, as they have this long 56-character onion URL. Another really nice improvement is that we now have SecureDrop available in 20 languages, most recently Slovak and Czech. If you speak a natural language that is not represented in this list, feel free to check out securedrop.org/translate and complete the translation for the language that you speak, and we can add it. If you were at the last hackathon last year, you might remember that one of the things that we were working on was simplifying the SecureDrop architecture, primarily for journalists. So far, we've made it really easy for sources to submit documents. You saw at the beginning, it's just a little web application that they go to in a regular web browser. But we've not done as much work previously making it easy for journalists to check these documents and work with them. And this re-architecture work I'm about to talk about has been funded by Mozilla Foundation, which is very much appreciated. So Just to explain a bit, this is how SecureDrop works today. So a source will submit documents using that web app I showed at the beginning, and that's done over Tor and it's submitted to a server, which is where they sit encrypted. Then a journalist will log in on an online workstation that uses an operating system called Tails. They'll download those documents and then they will go across an air gap. So they will put those documents on a USB drive in some cases, or they'll burn a CD that has those documents. They'll take those encrypted documents over to a machine that is air gapped. By air gapped, I mean it's never been connected to any network. So that's what this bold section is at the bottom. That is the air gap. And so the challenge with that from the perspective of the journalist is that every time they want to read something new, they have to burn the CD or put the document on a USB drive, take it over to an entirely separate machine. And so that's a little bit laborious from their perspective. And so we want to try to do something better. And so the reason why we have this architecture is because of the threat of malware. So a journalist can be sent anything from anyone. It could be fake. It could be malicious. If it's malicious, we want to ensure that this malicious software from a submission does not make its way out of the air gap. So it can't exfiltrate any of the other sensitive data that is stored on that air gap workstation, which is other sources' data, the private key used to decrypt those documents. And so that's why we have this air gap to provide security by compartmentalization. And there's a really promising operating system called Cubes, where everything runs inside of different virtual machines. So if you want to open sketchy files in one VM without compromising the VM where you keep your passwords, you can do that. And so that's an alternative approach to this take USB to air gap compartmentalization approach. So if we collapse this air gap and this journalist area into one area, you see how things would look if we were using Cubes OS. So there'd be a single workstation where when you open a document, it's opened in a VM that is then destroyed after use. So last year we had prototyped using Cubes for this purpose, to replace this whole area. And instead of having kind of working within Tails to interact with documents, there would be a single integrated application that, as of yesterday when I took these screenshots, looks like this. So it looks a lot like Slack. So last year we showed mock-ups, but this is the built version coded. We're actually working on this specific app during the hackathon. So when you download and open a message, it'll open, but in a VM that will be used only once for that document and then destroyed when the VM closes. One of the other things that we did in the past year on this area of the code base is we had a security audit performed to kind of validate both the approach and our implementation of it. So we had the Open Technology Fund pay for a third-party security audit done by Include Security. And we were really happy to see in that audit report that no high risk, with medium risk findings were found by those auditors. So if you're interested in this, I encourage you to check out securedrop.org/hackathon, and we would love your contributions. It is something that can be really impactful, especially for those organizations that get a lot of traffic through SecureDrop, especially in the run-up to the election next year. It can really save people a lot of time, make it a lot simpler and more intuitive for them to do their work, while still providing very strong security against malware. So, finally, before I end, I want to tell you about a couple of the interesting mentions and uses that we've seen in the past year. So in September, we got, I guess, a glance at how some reporters are encouraging sources to use SecureDrop. So this is Eric Trump, who I guess is the son of the US president, who wanted to helpfully note to the owner of the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, the great work that their journalists are doing. I'm going to choose to ignore that emoji. Reaching out to potential sources in the Trump administration. So we got to see how journalists like David Farenthold, in this case, reach out to sources. So he's best known, David Farenthold, for his Pulitzer Prize winning work reporting on Trump during the last presidential election. And in each note that he provides to sources, he's saying, hey, you can contact me through SecureDrop. Another interesting use of SecureDrop that is new is it was announced at DEF CON in August that the federal government is planning to use SecureDrop as a vulnerability reporting platform. So this is an initiative of the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And so the idea is that if a security researcher wants to submit a vulnerability, they can submit it through SecureDrop such that they are protected in the scenario where the government then turns around and tries to prosecute you. Imagine that. And so they'd be protected by submitting through SecureDrop. In the past couple of weeks, we saw another interesting development, which is Ron Wyden, who is the U.S. Senator from Oregon, urged federal inspectors general through a letter to start using SecureDrop for their online tip lines, which each one has right now on an HTTPS website that provides a way for whistleblowers to submit reports of waste, fraud, and abuse to the government. And he's recommending here that they consider using SecureDrop and Tor to do so to protect their identities. So I'm going to stop here, but if you're interested in learning more about the project, please follow us on Twitter and follow Freedom of the Press Foundation on Twitter, and check out our GitHub and Gitter channel if you want to get involved. And I do just want to say that this is a critical tool that virtually every major news organization holding Trump to account uses every day. And we're really lucky that we have the team that we do to support all of these organizations using the project. But it is expensive to keep SecureDrop strong each year since it's free, both as in freedom as in beer, and it's open source. So without support from people like you, this project would not exist. So please support us if you can, and there's a donation link below. Thank you.